will go ahead and just introduce myself and tell y'all a little bit about what we're going to be doing today and kind of how the format of this works. So my name is Brian, and I have been an avid forager for many years, and I've been teaching a lot in the past couple of years, especially in the past few months, just really branching out into new spaces of learning how to relate plants to a broader audience of people, because like I was just saying, there's just so much more diversity around the people that are getting to come to these classes now. So figuring out ways to dispense this to people has been really, really fun. And it's just increasing my knowledge. The secret to teaching is that you learn like 60% more efficiently when you teach stuff, and it forces you to learn new things. So I absolutely love doing it, and just love introducing people like y'all to new plants and fungi and trees and just all these amazing beings that are all around us, and ways to relate to them. And I personally believe that foraging for these plants and beginning to eat them as food sources or use them as medicine is one of the deepest ways to commune with them and to develop a relationship in which you're going to want to keep coming back and make sure that those plants and those fungi and those trees continue to grow and grow and grow. So I think it's a really beautiful relationship, and excited to share that with everybody. So thanks for coming. And basically the way that these classes run is we're going to go for roughly an hour or so, and I'm going to do a lot of screen sharing. I'm going to show you various plants that I have filmed. The quality of the video will sometimes be choppy, but you'll be able to get a sense of how the plants look, hopefully. I do record these and then I put them on YouTube within a day. My YouTube is Healing Ecosystems, and that's also my Instagram handle, and that's also my Facebook. So you can find me at all those places, and you're always welcome to send me a message if you're confused about something or just have questions or feedback, want to connect. I'm pretty available on those platforms, so definitely reach out. And I think we have, it's about 3 or 4 plants to go through today of new material. And these are things I actually went around and did some filming this morning in my neighborhood, and got pretty deep on some plants that I had been wanting to learn more efficiently for quite a while, and I'm just now starting to understand them. So you're going to get a pretty big download of some very interesting and very common plants. And let's see. Well, also, we have a little bit of time at the end. I have a whole backlog of things that we've done. I only see one person in here who's been here for several times. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, we'll be able to check in on some of these older plants that we have already gone over and see if there's any requests. So we got like the playlist, and then we got maybe a little bit of room for requests at the end if there's any plants that we want to learn. But this will be plenty of information to jump into for now. If you do have a question or a comment or a cool recipe that you want to share, feel free to drop it into the chat. You can also feel free to unmute yourself and talk on the screen. I'm totally okay with that. And yeah, that's basically it. Unless anyone has any questions or comments, we'll jump right into it. Sound good? Cool. All right, so we're going straight into share screen. We're going to start real basic with a plant that you may know already. And if you don't know what it's called, I guarantee you have seen it before. Anyone seen that and wants to say yes in the chat, go for it. All right, we're going to full screen. Here we go. This is a pretty cool video. I did it in slow-mo. All right, curious if anyone knows that plant off the top. I mean, the name was on the file, so you might have already seen it, but. All right, so this plant is called plantain. And this is a great one to know your Latin on, because it is by no means related to plantains like the banana. The Latin on this one is plantago, and this one's Plantago lanceolata to get specific. Glad someone knew this one already, good. And yeah, this is Plantago lanceolata. It's a very, very common weed in so many different landscapes. It's across North America. It was brought here from Europe a long time ago. It was originally called white man's footprint by the Native Americans because it literally would follow behind the Europeans and sprout up. So it was almost like the Europeans had brought this somewhat invasive plant, but also a medicinal plant. So it's quite interesting to get to know it. It's a easy one to identify. What you're seeing here is what you call a basal rosette, which is a circular pattern on the ground of those leaves all going around that central axis. And plantain has many different medicinal uses as well as edible possibilities. Most people will agree that it is much better cooked than raw, and that's how I personally enjoy cooking it. Eating it raw has a really odd flavor. Some people really, really hate it, but I definitely recommend cooking it. And also collecting younger leaves are going to be a lot better tasting than these older leaves. And right now, what you may be noticing is there's obviously flowers coming out. So there's these stalks with these flower blooms, and there's a bunch of tiny little flowers that come out of it. We'll get a good shot of that in a second. But right now would not necessarily be the ideal time to collect greens, though you could definitely collect greens. They're just going to be a little bit tougher, a little bit more bitter. But if you cook them up, maybe boil them up, change the water a couple of times, you'll be in for a good treat. And, you know, I always reinforce this, but these plants are so nutritious. It's really amazing. The taste profile of these things when they're cooked properly and collected at the proper time. But what I really wanted to emphasize on plantain is just the medicinal quality. It's such an accessible medicinal plant. A lot of people will call it like Band-Aid plant because it's so good for cuts and wounds. So you get a little cut and you're out in the field and you know can't get to a Band-Aid or something. You can take this and chew it up and then put it straight onto that wound. And that's called making a poultice. All right, so you put it on there, you wrap it up real nice, and you leave it on. It's going to help that skin heal a lot quicker. And then it's also antimicrobial, antibacterial, so it's going to help to clean out that wound. So it's really, really powerful in that way, super accessible and easy to use. That's a good picture of the flowers right there. They're really, really cutesy. But there's also the broadleaf plantain, which is a fairly common one. It has much fatter leaves than this, and that one is Plantago major. And that one's fairly common. I see narrow leaf or lance leaf plantain like this one around a lot more than the broadleaf, but the broadleaf is also a bit invasive, and you'll see it in a lot of different places. And then we also even have a native plantain here in California. It's called dot seed plantain, and it looks quite different than these. It looks more like a grass, but the flowers look similar and it's in the same genus, so they're closely related. But this is the one you mainly see around urban areas. It loves disturbed areas, disturbed soil, and something I guarantee if you don't already know it, you've been walking by a lot. So just start looking in lawns, look on the edge of paths, and you'll begin to come across this plant. So it's a basic first aid plant to know about. Oh, and then another fun fact. So I don't know if you've heard of psyllium husk before, the stuff that you take to kind of, you know, clean out your digestive system. It expands a lot when you drink water with it. Works pretty good. But that actually comes from plantain seed husk. There's a specific species of plantain that's used to make psyllium husk. And then right here is a cool little feature of this plant. Look how you can see how vascular it is. Hopefully that zoom will happen in just a second. But you see those little strings running through it. When you break it gently enough, you'll be able to see those little strings. And also notice the ribbing. The ribbing is specific to this kind of leaf. There's a little bit of margin to it. I'll pause this video so we can get in on that. There's definitely a little bit of toothness to the margins, and then it has a pointy end, an acumen leaf at the end, but then it has those ribs that run straight from the bottom all the way up to the top and then meet back up at the top. So those are some easy ways to identify it. Now, it doesn't have any kind of poisonous lookalikes or anything, so it's an easy one to get to know, and very, very common. And as far as, we've got a question over here, it says, what wisdom could you share around knowing where to harvest, like to avoid pesticides and other contaminants? Good question. So those are always, that's always a very pertinent question. I did an entire talk on this a couple of weeks ago. So if you want to get more in-depth information, I was talking all about urban harvesting 2 weeks ago. So that one's on the YouTube. But just to go over it really briefly, I'm okay with it. There's been studies that have come out of Berkeley Food Institute in very urban, very, very contaminated settings that have shown that all of these plants, for the most part, have like no contaminants in them, even when they're growing in contaminated soil, and they have more micronutrients than almost anything in the store. So it's really a 1-2 punch as far as them not only being safe, but being extremely good for you. And I was thinking about that too, because I was harvesting this morning from some like cracks in the sidewalk kind of spots, and I'm definitely washing them off just to keep off like dog pee as well as any kind of, car exhaust. But aside from washing them, I'm not concerned about the tissue at all, because I know that those tissues have been tested before. Not to say that that's 100% all the time the case, but for the most part, if I'm going around these lawns, I know these spots, and it's spots that I walk in my neighborhood a lot, and I know that they're not getting sprayed with pesticides, but the soil is not necessarily the best soil in the world either. So I feel okay using them, and also just thinking about how quickly they grow most of the time. They're just amazing, strong plants, and I feel like they're not absorbing any sort of that kind of toxic heavy metals that might be in the soil. So just to touch on that briefly, and once again, check back on that older video that I was talking about this more in depth, and definitely a great question. All right, unshare. If there's any questions about plantain, speak now. We're gonna keep on rolling through otherwise.
When you cook it, do you just kind of treat it like any other leafy green, like in terms of seasoning and such?
Yeah, pretty much. I would chop it up. I saute stuff all the time, so that's one of my ways to go. It can also be used as a pot herb,
Mm-hmm.
and like I was saying, the younger you get it, and the more succulent it's going to be, and the tastier it's going to be for the most part. But experiment with it; it's going to have different tastes. And the other interesting thing about wild plants is they can taste so different depending on where they're growing. If they're grown in shade versus grown in full sun versus grown in hard soil versus like garden soil, they'll have different qualities of bitterness to them too. So if you don't like something the first time, don't write it off. I always say at least do 2 experiments with each wild food, because the first time you're eating it, you have no reference for what your body has no reference for what it is. So I'd always say, like, try it first, get a sense for it, and then try it again, even if you don't like it. And then if you don't like it the second time, you can maybe give up on it. But check it out in different habitats as well. And they have a question here. What do you mean use as a pot herb? Basically just you put it into the pot and use it like an herb, like chop it up and put it into a soup or something like that, or a stew. It's real simple. All right. Cool. Let's move on to the next few plants. We'll get a bit deeper here. Unless there's any other questions about plantain. Did anyone recognize that plant and say like, oh, I've seen that before? Good. Cool. Welcome everybody who jumped on in the middle of that. We've got a good little crew today. All right. So we're gonna get into a plant that I've been trying to ID properly for months and months and months, and I finally totally understand how to differentiate it from this other plant. And I'm gonna upload all this information to you all, and you will hopefully get out there and experiment with this and figure out these 2 plants. The good news is we're going to be dealing with a few different plants that look very, very similar to one another. And if anyone wants to guess on what this yellow flower is right here, I'd be curious to hear what people think, because I think it might trick you. But These are all edible plants and they're all good. They have different tastes to them, but there's no like toxic look-alike situation going on here. It's just plants that are very closely related to each other but have different culinary qualities. So it's good to get to know each one. Oh, that's a cool guess. Calendula, someone said. No, not calendula. I can see how you would perhaps think that. Yeah, calendula looks sort of similar to that. Calendula has a little bit bigger leaves, but anyone else? There's a really common plant that I figured someone would think it was. Probably like the most common of the wild edibles. Dandelion. Cool. Yeah, exactly. Good. Um, yeah, these are not dandelion. I was setting you guys up to trick you, but it looks really similar to dandelion. And no, not thistle either. But I'm glad y'all are just throwing it out there. It's good to try and it's good to fail. You'll learn more that way. But this plant is closely related to dandelion. And let's start up the video and I'll explain a bit more as we go through. All right, so what you're seeing here is the flower of the leaf on the left. What I want y'all to notice is that these two leaves are different. And in this particular instance, you can tell that they're very different. But out in the field, they can look so many different ways. These two are very hard to tell apart when they're in their vegetative stage before they flower. And what I want you to notice as well is that there is just a singular stalk going up to that flower. That's called a peduncle, the flower stem. So there's a singular peduncle going on. And that's the number one way I'm able to identify it. But of course, plants are not always in flower, so it can be a bit tough. Now, other things to notice, this plant on the right, this lighter green foliage, has these sort of warty looking qualities to it, okay? There's almost like these little raised bumps on it. So maybe we'll look at it closer in another video, but you can at least see it a little bit here, hopefully. There's those kind of warts on that plant on the right. And it has some hair to it. That one on the left has a good bit of hair on it. It's a little bit furry. And this plant is called cat's ear. All right, cat's ear, like the ear of a cat. And you can kind of see why. It's very soft, has those little hairs on it. And the main thing to notice is that cat's ear has that singular peduncle, okay? They might split into two, like down at a certain spot, but they're not going to be a cluster of flowers. There's just one flower. They look very similar to dandelion, but they're not. They're just very closely related. They taste quite different than dandelion. Now this one that we're looking at, the lighter green one, this one is called bristly oxtongue. And bristly oxtongue is also very closely related to dandelion and very closely related to cat's ear. Now, someone's asking for the spelling on, are you asking for the spelling on bristly oxtongue? I'll type that in. Bristly oxtongue and then cat's ear. All right. And this is some more advanced foraging, I would say, to know these plants apart, but not too hard. And these two specimens are so different looking. The other thing you're probably noticing is that the leaves on the right, the cat's ear, are way more, have much deeper lobes. Okay, the lobes almost go all the way back to the main stem. And on this bristly oxtongue on the left, not very lobed whatsoever. But they can vary a lot depending on where they're growing. These are a good example to tell apart, but you're going to be in the field looking at them like, oh, what was that one again? Because the margins can look so different at different times depending on where they're growing. So it's a cool one to just get to know more, and it's a good time to start learning them once they're in flower, because when they're in flower it becomes a lot more obvious which is which. But why are we even learning about these random little weeds? You've probably seen these around and thought what ugly little plants these are, especially the bristly oxtongue. It's not very pretty, to be honest. And we'll see a bigger version of that in just a second. But that right there is the basal rosette of the of the cat's ear, and you can see how furry it looks. But like I was saying, these plants are actually delicious. They're really, really good. And the more that I cook and eat these things, the less I'm inclined to ever buy vegetables at the grocery store. When it comes to greens and whatnot, it's just, I'm getting them straight from the neighborhood and straight from my backyard for the most part, because they have such subtle flavors that just don't come through in other things. So I really want you to go out and actually eat these things and incorporate them into different dishes that you like to eat, and just substitute greens for them, and then try them on their own too. When you cook something in oil with a little bit of salt, it's going to taste pretty good no matter what. But the flavors of these kind of plants really, really come out in different ways than typical greens from the store go. And not to hate on greens from the grocery store, I definitely enjoy kale and collards and cabbage and all that cool stuff. But these are just neat in that they have not been bred in any sort of way. Like, this is the original way that nature developed them. So they're kind of pure in this certain way, and I think that's why they have more antioxidants and nutrients than stuff from the store. So let's go to, well, first of all, does anyone have questions about that? Yeah, how would you eat it? Flowers included. Great question, Michelle. So the way that I usually eat stuff is just, I do a lot of sauteing, a lot of stir frying. So I would typically take that home, and I would preferably get it before it's flowering. Once again, you can definitely take it home once it's flowering and eat it, but it's gonna be a little tougher, a little more bitter typically. But I would just chop up the greens and fry them up or boil them a little bit. They're very, it's not something I'll put in a salad raw because it's so furry and so hairy. So it's not going to be that great of a mouthfeel or throat feel if you eat it like that. But you could, and it's not going to like hurt you. But I would cook it up a little bit in some oil. That would be my typical way to go. And you can totally eat the flowers. Just like with dandelion flowers, you can eat them, but you want to get them before they're like kind of past this mature point, or just cut off the yellow part, because underneath there's this like kind of fluffiness to them where they're starting to form their seeds. And that's not as appealing, but it's great to take some of those flowers from cat's ear or dandelion and then put them into a salad. It makes your plate look really cool. And flowers are, of course, very delicious and nutritious too. All right. Any other questions on cat's ear? We're going to actually do a quiz on that in just a second. It'll be a fun quiz. All right. And let's see, another question. Cat's ear. How is it different to ID leaf from thistle or mustard? Good question. Good question. So I don't have a way to show y'all this, but mustard does not have those hairs on it. That's going to be the number one thing between mustard and cat's ear. With thistle is real spiny. All right, thistle has this crazy, like really intense spines, like you're not going to want to touch it. Cat's ear you can totally touch, it's soft. Okay, so those are the real obvious differences. And thistle has really pronounced veination as well, more so than a cat's ear. But mainly it's going to be that pokey quality. So thistle and mustard are also really great edibles, and we covered both of those in previous classes. So those are all on YouTube as well. I got an extensive one on mustard, I think, in my first class. And then the thistle one actually might not be up on YouTube, come to think of it. We might have time to go into that at the end, though. I have a cool video on thistle. I really enjoy eating thistle. All right, so hopefully that answered that a little bit. All right, any other questions? Cool. Let's jump on into the next one. So this video is going to be highlighting not cat's ear, excuse me. This one is bristly ox tongue, bristly ox tongue. And I should be giving y'all the Latin on these things too. These don't have common names that are shared necessarily, but common names are so confusing across different places. So just to get a little nerdy for a second, bristly ox tongue's Latin name is Helmothechia echioides. No, it's Helmintothechia echioides. And these things are hard to pronounce because they're Latin. I'm using my cheat sheet right now. because I still haven't memorized this one, but that's bristly oxtongue. And then the one we were just looking at, cat's ear, is Hypocoeris radicata. And I try to memorize as many Latin names as I can when it comes to foods that I eat. It helps a lot once you start eating them. You start seeing the Latin names a lot. All right, but we'll look at the differences between this one and cat's ear. So you can probably obviously see it already. It's those little warts that are coming off of it that are quite obvious. And the margins on this one look almost more like cat's ear margins. So that's the cat's ear that we were just looking at. The one that I'm holding up, that's cat's ear. Softer, doesn't have those warts. But the margins look so similar between these two plants in different forms. So showing you the warts right there. And the other thing about bristly oxtongue is a little bit harder. So it's one that actually, I was cooking it earlier and it kind of hurt my finger a little bit. It's not like nettle or thistle or something where it really poke you, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, I see you, I feel you. But the cat's ear is very soft. It's just subtly more soft than the bristly oxtongue. You're seeing the purplish stem. It's not going to necessarily always have that color to it, but the stem is actually a delicious vegetable. Hold on. Because my screen sharing is paused. You guys probably aren't seeing what's on my screen. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. One second, everybody. All right, you should be seeing a kind of stout looking green plant on the screen. Do y'all see that? Okay, cool. All right, so let's jump back into it. I don't know how much of that last video y'all saw. I just noticed it wasn't sharing. All right, so yeah, we're seeing the little warts on there. We're seeing those bristles. And I was just talking about the stem. Now, stems have become my favorite vegetable this season. I've really been working with a lot of stems. So as this is starting to shoot up a stem, and you find it when it's tender before it's flowered and seeded, you can cut that stem, and you're going to be stopping that plant from reproducing is one thing you should know, but these are weeds that people really dislike most of the time anyway, and will probably get cut down pretty soon by someone with a weed whacker. And you can cut that stem though where it's nice and tender, and you can basically use it like asparagus, right? So you take off the leaves. You can often peel off the outer skin of the stem too, and it'll make it even tastier. But these stems are great. I've done some sauteing with these, and they're absolutely delicious. Stems are often my favorite part of a lot of these green vegetables. They often have a much milder flavor and have more of a substantial, kind of feel like more substantial food than just the greens. So this is a cool stem to harvest right here. And cat's ear is not going to really have this stem. It just shoots up its flower without any leaves on it. But the bristly oxtongue shoots up this big stem with a bunch of leaves on it. So that's another way to tell those two apart. All right, there's not much more to this video. Not sure if y'all saw at the beginning when I was showing the difference between this specimen of the bristly oxtongue versus the cat's ear. Oh, when I'm showing y'all down here, this is a singular flower coming up, right? So this is not from the bristly oxtongue. This is from a dandelion that's hidden underneath the bristly oxtongue. They're often growing in the exact same habitat. So dandelions will always have that singular peduncle, that singular flower stem. All right, I told y'all we were going to get deep and technical. Sneaky indeed. Very sneaky. All right, but we don't want to get confused. We know that bristly oxtongue, even though we don't see it in this video, has peduncles that have several flower heads on them. So it'll be branching and then have a bunch of little flower heads all near each other. And they look very similar to a dandelion or to a cat's ear. All right, so any questions on that? And if this is at all overwhelmingly technical for you, I would just say take it in for now, and whichever plants you feel interested in and you feel called to go out and start harvesting and get to know, just learn one or two. Don't feel like you got to go out and know every Latin name, and you just got to know the ones you're eating. Okay, so people get freaked out with eating wild plants because they think there's so much poisonous stuff out there, but the one rule is just know what it is that you're eating 100%. And yeah, Link's asking, what's the word you use for flowerhead? Peduncle. No, the peduncle, it's not fuduncle, it's peduncle, and it's the stem going up to the flower. And you were saying there's so many similar looking plants of this type. Yeah, there really are. Okay, Michelle's asking, great question. Can I just confirm that oxtongue is different than bristly oxtongue? All right, oxtongue and bristly oxtongue are the same. Those are the exact same plant. The two that are different that we've been talking about are cat's ear versus bristly oxtongue, right? Yeah, it's a lot. And then I put up a picture on my Instagram earlier where you can scroll through, and I have a name on each or each leaf, so it makes it a little bit more concise just to break this stuff down, because there are a lot that look very similar to each other. And like I said, the good news is they're all edible, so it's not a big deal. I prefer the bristly oxtongue and the cat's ear to dandelion, actually. Dandelion's okay, but it's extremely bitter. All right, they sell dandelion in the stores now. It's like a pretty common farmers market vegetable, and a common little bulk. You can buy a little bit of it at Berkeley Bowl for like $2 or $3 at the grocery store around here. So it's becoming more popular. It's a really cool plant, but dandelion's very bitter to me. I don't really enjoy it that much. I enjoy the root. It's made into a drink, but the leaves are like, they're all right. But I really enjoy bristly oxtongue and cat's ear as a cooked vegetable. They taste really, really good. And then also using the stem of the bristly oxtongue is really amazing. All right, cool. So yeah, we're getting into it, but are there any other questions before we go on? All right. Y'all are asking, are the leaves of oxtongue always edible? Good question. So
mostly meaning like, are they only edible when they're young, or can you still eat them when the plant is aging and getting towards seeding?
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you can eat them at any stage for sure. There'll be various levels of palatability, and this is a plant that can grow in like really crazy harsh conditions. So when it's growing in harsh conditions, it's probably going to be more nutritious typically, but it's also going to be a lot tougher to eat. The mouthfeel is not going to be so good when you're eating it, and it's probably going to have more bitter compounds in it. So I would say if you can find it young before it starts to flower or before it starts to send up that shoot, it's going to be more enjoyable overall as far as kind of a culinary experience goes. But I mean, they're technically always edible, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have another question. Does cat's ear ever grow taller like the oxtongue, or does it always stay as a basal rosette? Great question. Cat's ear is known for staying really flat. So people say that it has this defense mechanism where it's basically able to withstand being mowed. Like it's so flat to the ground that a lawnmower will go over the top of it and it's not going to kill it because it's so flat to the ground. So as to say, cat's ear is going to typically almost always be growing in that basal rosette small to the ground. And then when it sends up its flower head, that's when it's going to be slightly taller. But the basal rosette's still going to be just on the ground for the most part. It's not going to get really tall like bristly oxtongue does. And as to say, that's my experience with it and from the literature that I've read, but there's going to be, there's evolution happening around us all the time, and there are also always exceptions. So just to say it's more complex than any simple answer would give. But typically it's going to be laying low, going underneath those weed whackers and lawnmowers. All right, great questions. Always appreciate the engagement. So if anyone has any last questions, I am totally available to check those out. And if not, we will jump into learning one new plant, and then also reviewing these other two in a video. How do you ID cat's ear apart from dandelion? All right. So the fuzziness, basically. I actually have a dandelion leaf. I don't think I have any dandelion on video, interestingly enough, but I have one leaf from my garden that I brought in. All right, so one thing to notice, and you should be, if you're looking at my screen, if you're looking at me, you'll see this. This is a dandelion leaf, and I know that because it has those margins with those teeth, and those teeth, this isn't a great example of it, but the teeth are gonna pretty much always be pointing back towards the middle of the basal rosette, all right? So it'd be like, shh, 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 shh. All right. There's also different kinds of dandelions, but this is the typical Taraxacum officinalis dandelion, or officinal, most common of the dandelions. And it's going to be those teeth pointing back, and then it also is very, it's called glabrous when there's no hair on it. All right. So if you look at the back and you look down the vein, it's real smooth. There's no hair. And then on the top, there's a little bit of hair. You're not going to be able to see it on here, but it's like a little bit of peach fuzz on there. Very, very minuscule amount. But to ID the cat's ear apart from the dandelion, the cat's ear is going to have a very noticeable fuzz to it. They all have the same quality of when you break them, you're going to have a little bit of sap that comes out, a little bit of white sap, and that's very common among those different dandelion type plants. See someone else over there with some plants on the screen. You want to tell us what you got?
Hi.
Hi.
Does this one look like an ox tongue? It's got the like.
See if I can look closer. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would definitely. What do you think? First of all.
It looked sort of similar because it has like the those tongue like the tongue looking texture to it.
Yep. Yep. Totally. Yeah, I would definitely say that that's a bristly ox tongue because it has those little warts on it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the margins aren't as crazy. Yeah, that's a bristly ox tongue. Good. Just pick that.
Yeah. There's like weeds all around, right?
Uh-huh.
This one looked maybe like the other one, like.
Cool, cool. We're actually just about to jump into that plant, so
Oh really?
it,
Okay.
it will all be known in just a moment. Good, good. That's cool. Thanks for the.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you knew what it was, so you're learning along. Good.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna share screen, and yeah, we're getting into some subtlety here. I love it. All right. And let's see. All right, cool. So y'all should be seeing a video of a few different plants here with some brown dead weeds around them. And we have a few different plants here. So let's see. We have two of the ones that we've talked about already, and then we have a third that we're going to learn. All right, so this one here on the right that I'm touching. Yeah, let's see. Let's get a vote. What do y'all think it is for those of you who are on the chat, if anyone wants to vote on what that is? All right, got to vote for bristly ox tongue. Anyone want to back Michelle up on that? BOT, bristly ox tongue, love it. All right. I will go ahead and say that y'all are correct on that one. That one has those little warts on it. It has those, you can see it right here too. It's like quite, the bristles look pretty hard. It's not gonna hurt you. I'm obviously touching it, but it's a pretty gentle bristle. All right, so bristly ox tongue. Let's see what other characteristics. All right, you're seeing this one's starting to shoot up that main central stem too. It's starting to want to go to flower. It probably has another week or two before it really sends up that shoot. And then I'm pointing out the pineapple weed, which somebody already named, but not really going into that one too much. We can maybe touch on it for a second at the end. All right, but yeah, showing all that stem that's about to shoot up. And that is something that's an identifier of the bristly ox tongue, is it having that quality of where it will get pretty tall. And these are good ones for harvest, and I would harvest some of these and take them home and eat them. All right, and what do y'all think this one is? You had to guess. Your life depended on it. Got 1 vote for cat's ear, 2 votes for cat's ear. All right, wonderful. Any dissenting opinions? Nope. All right, yeah, I would say this is definitely cat's ear. And this is a good specimen of it because we see how low to the ground it is. It's just hugging that ground, not wanting to get weed whacked. And it has those very distinct undulating margins going on. You can tell that it has some fur to it, but you can tell that that fur is probably a little bit less bristly than the bristly ox tongue. So this is a good one to take home before it flowers. And you can tell the color is never a really good indicator. Like the shades of green look quite different from the first specimens we were looking at up to these specimens. So color can be so variable with these different wild plants. All right, yeah, perfect basal rosette. Someone sees that ladybug chilling. Yeah, that ladybug is chilling right there. Right in the middle of the basal rosette. All right. And we're gonna fast forward. Let's wait for it. Actually, we're about to get into that last plan. This is the one, Deanne, that you were just showing us that we're about to get into. All right, so right here, it's a really common weed that you've probably seen before. It's not the most attractive plant, but it is really good actually. All right, and it's one that often gets confused with wild lettuce, and you know they're all pretty closely related. The wild lettuces are very closely related to this. But does anyone know this one off the top? Milkweed? No, not milkweed, but good guess. It does have a milkiness when it's broken, that's for sure, but milkweed's a different thing. All right. Any other guesses? It's a pretty common edible. Thistle. Oh, close, close. All right, so this is actually called, let me go back to that. This is actually called sow thistle, S-O-W thistle. And it's not a thistle, it's not really related to thistles. It's related to dandelions, but that's just the name for it. And I presume that's probably because it has those spikes to it. And those spikes are pretty chill. The genus of this one is Sonchus, S-O-N-C-H-U-S. And there's a few different species of it, but this is the common sow thistle. And what I want to show y'all here of how to identify it is by these clasping leaves. So the leaves going up that stem are clasping onto the stem. Let's see if we can get to a good shot of that. That's a decent shot. But like right there where my pointer's going around, you see where the stem's at, and then those leaves are going around it. Okay? So that's called clasping. And then, let's see. There's also this sort of cupping quality to it on certain ones. But yeah, you can see how the flowers look very similar to dandelion, very similar to the cat's ear. And this is one that you're gonna find just, you know, I can walk down the side of my house and this is one really common one that I see growing in almost total shade and is a really delicious edible actually. When you find it young before it's flowering, you can definitely take it and put it into a salad raw, chop it up and eat it raw, and it's pretty good like that. But you can definitely saute it. You can still, you know, use these leaves like we've been talking about. And someone's asking, is the pink color telltale for sow thistle? Um, I would say no. I can definitely think of ones that I've seen that are more fully green. But that pink color is pretty typical. I see that most of the time. Specifically, it seems when they're older. When they're younger, they can be more of just a total green going on. So it's not 100%. But they can look quite different when they're young. It's one that I would definitely look up and look up what it looks like when it's smaller. And I might try to feature this one on my Instagram this Friday. I don't think I've actually done this one on the Foraging Friday. So I'll get some photos of some younger ones to show you guys. But that is sow thistle. And the stalk of this one is actually, once again, probably the best part of it. So when you find them when they're like this, like I grabbed the stem and I could tell that it was really succulent. So I cut it off and then I peeled off the outside skin and then I ate the inside. And it's really interesting. It's like kind of peppery, kind of bitter, but not as bitter as the leaves. And just really succulent and refreshing. So the stem of this one is totally good and also good to cook. All right. Any questions on sow thistle? All right, so I'm just showing off that nice stem right here. Then we're looking back at the bristly ox tongue, sow thistle, and cat's ear. All right, and then that right there is pineapple weed and or wild chamomile is sometimes called. And when you smell those flowers, they're going to smell like pineapples. When you irritate them a little bit and smell them. Has very similar qualities to chamomile. Relaxing, good for sleepy time. Very common weed that you'll find growing in disturbed areas and very clay soil. So if you're walking a trail or something, you'll probably see this one growing right in the middle of the trail. It's a neat plant. Also growing out of like the cracks on the sidewalk often. All right, and Michelle has a good question here. If you find a plant, what's the usual yield you can take from it without damaging the plant? Or is that just going to be a given? It depends on the plant. It depends on if it's an annual or if it's a perennial. Depends on the conditions it's growing in. But let's take like one of these plants, for example. Like let's say we were, taking a harvest of the cat's ear. It really depends, but these plants are so tough. Like you could probably take, I don't know, half of those leaves and that plant would still probably be okay and still probably try to send up a shoot. It's quite variable, but like I said, most of these kinds of plants in particular are noxious weeds that people are going to end up coming out and probably weed whacking down or pulling and throwing in the compost bin anyway. So, not to say that their lives aren't important, but to say that like if you eat them, it would probably be more of an honor to their life force than if they get, composted or thrown away or, God forbid, sprayed with Roundup or something like that. But most of these plants are not ones that you're really concerned about their populations so much, especially like sow thistle too, just something that, grows in the alleyway of my house. And, that's a good question. I would say a lot of these things, even when you break their stem, they still might have enough vigor to come back, but it all depends on like how far along they are and how much vigor they have left, depending on rain conditions, et cetera, et cetera. But most of these are really hardy and can take you like taking a lot of their plant matter and they can still go on. So hopefully that helped put in some perspective. All right. Wonderful. And are there any questions about the plants that we just saw? We just did a cool little quiz review. You guys did really well. And we can do one last plant. Since we got a lot of people still on and we got about 10 minutes roughly. But any questions before I move on? All right. So we're going to do a vote on this one to see which plant we do. This is my last time doing this free class for now. I'm just like about to go off and do a little digital detox situation and kind of be off the screens for a bit and relax next week. So I'm gonna take a week off of doing this at least and kind of revision what I'm gonna do with it. So um, I'm grateful a lot of people tuned in today. We're definitely getting some momentum going. And hopefully you learn some plants that you can go out and start harvesting and start experimenting with. And you'll probably come up with some better recipes than what I got. So let's see. Let's look at these foraging videos. My list of the foraging videos. And if anyone who's really paying attention sees a plant on there that they are interested in learning about, these are ones from past classes, but let's review one of them. And I have one in mind, so if people don't vote on one that they want, I will just choose. If you see anything that's really calling to you, all right, gotta vote for yarrow, gotta vote for wild radish, mallow, or yarrow, gotta vote for pine, gotta vote for chickweed. This is a terrible election process. There's too many choices. I'm just gonna veto everybody and just do whichever one I want. All right, any other requests? I'll choose one. Seems like yarrow's up there. Cool. All right, I was thinking thistle because we talked about it for a brief moment, but let's go into yarrow because that's a cool medicinal plant. And I don't know, maybe we'll have time for both. Probably not. Yeah, yarrow's a cool one. Let's see. And yarrow is one that grows so widespread too, so it really relates no matter what your bioregion is. You probably have seen this plant around. And all right. Okay, stop sharing, go to the next one. All right, we're gonna start with this yarrow video since y'all want yarrow. All right, so this is a cool yarrow patch. It's actually growing underneath our BART tracks, which is like our train system here in the Bay Area. And this is an awesome patch. It's really, really hardy. But yeah, often when you see yarrow, you'll see it in these big clusters. It'll be growing in a patch. Now, the reason for that is because it moves by underground rhizomes. So plants will pretty much, most plants will produce by seeds, okay? You'll have flowers like you have right here, and they'll go to seed and then drop seed. But then some plants have developed this strategy that's very, very competitive, where they're able to move underground and produce genetic clones of themselves under the ground. And yarrow is one of those plants, typically. Now, what I want to point out here is that this is the white flowered yarrow, all right? This is the one that's native to California. There's also one that's native to Europe that was brought over here a long time ago, and that one's an invasive plant on the East Coast and beyond. But we also have our native yarrow, which is pretty much always a white flowered yarrow. That's the most medicinal yarrow. There's also ones that you can get for your garden that are like yellow flowered, pink flowered, purple flowered, red flowered. But those are cultivars. Those have been selected for those really pretty showy flowers, and they're not by any means selected for medicinal properties. So if you're gonna make medicine from yarrow, I would most recommend using the white flowered yarrow. You could use the other colored flowers too, but they're not gonna be as medicinal more than likely. This is the most studied yarrow. Yarrow has a lot of cool medicinal studies behind it as well. Much in the same vein as plantain, yarrow is great for skincare. What I want to show y'all here is that these are umbel flowers, like little umbrellas, right? Little clusters of flowers on top like that. It's an umbel flower. And yeah, what I mostly use yarrow for, some people do eat it and some people enjoy the taste of it. It's absolutely like weird tasting to me, but don't let that affect you because some people love it. And some people will put it raw into salads, but it's overwhelming to me. But just use small amounts of it. Like with any wild food, you try a small amount first if you're going to eat it, and Don't go overboard the first time. Make sure it sits with your stomach first. But with yarrow, I'd always go small amounts just because it's so pungent to me. But yarrow, I mean, it has a lot of folklore around it. It's an amazing boundary plant, they say, when it comes to setting boundaries in your life. Keeping a little sprig of yarrow around, or carrying it around with you is said to help you with setting your boundaries. And I can imagine that too, with like the way that this plant grows, and it has this like a really nice boundary line of where it's always kind of pushing out into other plants, and it's like really good at suppressing other weeds. So not a lot will like come through your yarrow patch necessarily. But aside from that energetic quality, as far as the medicine of it goes, highly astringent, antimicrobial, really good in the same way as plantain, of being able to like chew it up and make a poultice from it and put it onto a wound, and it will help it heal. So I've definitely had infections before that were being really stubborn, that weren't reacting well to neosporin or peroxide, and then I took some yarrow and chewed it up and put it onto those wounds, and those little infections went away really, really quickly. So just chew it up, put it on there, hold it on there for however long, and it's very, very effective in that regard. What else about yarrow? The Latin name is Achillea millefolium, and millefolium refers to thousands of foliages, basically. So lots of little leaves. There's like thousands of leaves on those plants, right? Has those little lace-like leaves, almost fern-like in a way. But very lacy, and the smell of yarrow, if you ever smelled it before, is very distinguishing. So can't go wrong with the smell. And those umbel flowers are very distinguishing. The foliage can be like, some of this foliage is actually more gray-green rather than like light neon green. So it kind of depends on what stage it's at. Once it starts to flower out, some of the bottom stuff will start to die off, and that's totally natural. But it's just a great host plant, great native plant. We're seeing some spit bugs growing on this yarrow. So it's definitely a cool host for a lot of insects. And yeah, someone's asking, does it have any lookalikes? What's your favorite way to use it? Lookalikes of yarrow. Some people will say that poison hemlock looks like yarrow, and it doesn't. But just something to be aware of. You would have to be like pretty blind to not tell the difference. Poison hemlock also has lacy leaves. It's a really good wild plant to know about it, because it's totally not edible. It's actually deadly poisonous. But it also has umbel flowers, and I think that's where people will say that poison hemlock looks sort of like yarrow, in the fact that they both have umbel flowers. But look up poison hemlock if you're interested. Definitely if you're foraging around. California in particular has a lot of poison hemlock, and it's all across the U.S. So it's a good one to know about for anyone who's interested in wild foraging, because it looks like a carrot, and it's pretty deadly poisonous, even in small amounts for some people. So it's a good one. But other lookalikes of yarrow, nothing I can think of. Does anyone else know any? And yeah, you're saying that the yarrow leaves kind of spiral a little bit. Yeah, it's an interesting way to think about it. I could see that. Fennel, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I could see fennel kind of looking like that. Fennel has the umbel shaped flower heads for sure, and kind of those lacy leaves. And the main thing is going to be the smell. Fennel has a much bigger leaf as well. But yeah, I can see that. And then fennel's also going to be growing. It'll be growing in patches, but it's not going to be growing like really tight clusters like yarrows. Fennel's an annual, so it's going to grow a bunch of plants and then die back at the end of the season. So yarrow, I hear you can see it year round, which is cool. Not necessarily the flowers, but at least the foliage. But yeah, fennel's a good one to know. And fennel's one that you could confuse with poison hemlock seed. So yeah, hemlock's definitely a good one to know, just so you can avoid it. And then we have a question. Do you reckon you can make a tea or water saturation from the plant, put it in a bath or something, and still receive those medicinal qualities? Yeah, I would imagine that you could. The old story as it goes about fennel, or about yarrow, is, the Latin name Achillea millefolium. So Achillea refers to Achilles, You probably heard about him from Greek mythology before. And it's said that Achilles was dumped in, or he was held by his mother by his ankle, around his Achilles tendon, and dumped into a thing of yarrow to protect him because he was a fearless warrior, right? And so that yarrow put protection around him. And when he would go into battle, he would be pretty much impervious to wounds, except for on his Achilles heel, right? That was his one spot that didn't get dipped in the yarrow. So he would also give that plant to his warriors to help them to heal up wounds. So it's something you'd stuff into wounds. But yeah, so as to say, according to that legend, some people say that he was dipped into a river. That's part of the legend. Some people say he was dipped into a thing of yarrow tea. So either way, I would say that, yeah, making it into a bath, it would probably have certain qualities to it that were medicinal, and your skin's like your biggest organ. So it would definitely be getting into your system. So that's a cool way to think about it. And then someone's saying, I take it as a tincture and it makes me strong like a bull. I bet it does. That's awesome. That's awesome. Make you have fierce boundaries. All right. Anything else on yarrow? It seems like y'all have a lot of experience with it as well. Just I prefer to just plant it. I don't make a whole lot with it other than making some tea every once in a while. But the thing about the tea is it's very drying. Okay. So if you have like a wet cough, yarrow is great for drying out your upper respiratory system. It's very astringent. So it's quite a drying herb to use. And someone's asking, are the flowers medicinal? Yeah, the flowers are indeed medicinal. And depending, you could make a tincture from the flowers. You could make tea from the flowers as well. But I'm not sure of like how much, if they're more or less medicinal, but probably just a little bit different. Flower bath would be awesome. All right. Cool. Good feedback. Anyone else got any yarrow questions or tips about yarrow? All right. Grows at what elevation? That's a good question. Or terrain, I suppose, what you're asking. I know down here, I mean, we're a little bit above sea level. And it grows really well. And I believe it grows into the mountainous areas of California. Can also grow in sand. I've seen it growing around the beach before. It really loves like scrubby places, like places with a lot of sun. It's a little bit tough to get it going sometimes, but you can actually do divisions. I did a whole class on this last week, talking about how to take divisions of plants and actually clone them. And yarrow is a good one to take the roots and then clone. But it can be a little bit finicky. Once it gets going, it's super tough and can keep going pretty easily, but it could take a little bit of finessing to get it going, but depends on how good your green thumb is. But, I think it grows pretty widespread. So when I was in the Appalachians, we had it growing up in the mountains, like, we were pretty high up, and it was really taking over those fields. So that's quite a range, quite a tough plant. All right. Any other questions about anything that we covered today? And this will be going onto YouTube, so if you want to review it, you can do that at your leisure. And I'll just be signing off here in a moment, but I'll give a quick shout out to my Instagram. If you're not already following it, maybe a lot of you came to me through Instagram, but that's where I'm probably the most active, but I'm also on Facebook at Healing Ecosystems as well. And there we go. And I have a class coming up this weekend. I'll just share a screen and show y'all. If anyone's interested, we're going to be talking about, actually, I'll just copy paste it. Do that. Yeah, we're going to be talking about plants and fungi that are both medicinal and edible. So that will be a cool class. I'm teaching that with my friend Taylor, and she's didn't mean to share that with just link. She's really knowledgeable with fungi, so really cool resource if you're interested in making, medicines. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can use, between plants and fungi. It's like pretty much all we need as far as healthcare is already around us. So just a matter of touching into those things and learning how to make the medicine. And the great thing about making your own medicine is that you have, buku amounts of it to last. I have medicines from like 2 or 3 years ago when I just made a bunch of black walnut tincture, for example. And you can just have it on hand for a long period of time. So it's really awesome to get into that practice. It's not that hard. And we'll be touching into some of that this weekend in this workshop that I just posted in the chat. And we'll be doing one more of those at the end of May. So stay tuned for more details. And I had one other question about what we talked about today, which is, did you say what the difference between the flower of sow thistle and dandelion? Great question. No, I didn't touch on that. The flower of sow thistle, to put it simply, is going to have several little clusters on it, right? And dandelion is going to always have just one singular peduncle, one singular flower stem with one flower sitting on top. And then those sow thistle flowers are often a bit smaller too. And then they have very similar looking seeds though. They look like those, the dandelion seeds that have the little thing you blow on and they blow away. Sow thistle has the same thing. I saw some birds come to my garden the other day and they were just eating sow thistle seeds basically. And I thought that was really neat. And I was like, okay, I might try some sow thistle seeds, try to watch what the birds are doing and replicate it as much as I can. But hopefully that helped with that question. They're fairly easy to tell apart between the cluster of the flowers versus that one flower with the dandelion. So you guys just went deep into learning a lot of stuff. I'm going to let you just take that and digest it. And if there's any questions that come up later, feel free to contact me. Super grateful for everybody being here today and for, paying attention and giving me feedback and all that. So much appreciated. And I'll see you guys on the interwebs. Stay safe, stay healthy. Talk to you soon. All right. Happy harvesting, everybody. Adios.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that was awesome.
Appreciate y'all. Bye. Good to see you again.